morning to all of you. And you are being students of my students, so therefore you are all grand students of mine. So I welcome all of you to today's session. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be visiting a place where one of my earlier students is a faculty member, and a faculty member with good reputation, with good commitment and integrity. Now he is teaching a subject which I used to teach him earlier, and he requested me that since the economics is being taught to engineering students, a question often comes to them that how is this relevant to us? And generally in engineering colleges or engineering courses, the social sciences, humanities, languages, all these are often seen as unnecessary, burdensome and often boring. But let me remind all of you that education is all about completeness. It is not only that one thing you learn and are quite ignorant of everything else. We live in an economic world where the economic laws, the economic scenario guides our behavior. It is not sufficient that you have a good technical knowledge, although that is also equally essential, but it is not sufficient. It is not sufficient because when you go out and work in the industry, you are working, you are part of an economic system, and that systems that start guiding your behavior, your design, your product, rather than the technique of producing something or manufacturing something. In this context, economics as a discipline is very significant, very important, and that is why it is taught to all the engineering students, because that helps them later in their life. If not immediately, later in their life, you will yourself find that how economic laws are so significant to you. Now, you know that broadly economics is divided into two parts, that is microeconomics and the other is known as the macroeconomics. While macro deals with small issues, rather individual issues, if I will not say small or big, but individual issues, where you look at the problem of consumption, production, pricing of an individual firm or an individual product. How price of a product is determined, how consumption is determined, how does a consumer determine his consumption or satisfaction. So all these things, and how firms produce by substituting between factors, different factors of production, or which you often call input. Now all this is also equally important, and economic laws start guiding your production processes, substitution of one by another, and so many things. But at the same time, macroeconomics, which deals with the economic system as a whole, here you are not concerned with the price of a single product, but you are concerned with pricing as such. You are concerned with price level in the economy. If inflation is occurring, if inflation is taking place, one cannot say that we will not be affected by it. A consumer as well as a producer, both are affected by price changes. And you have to account for it in your production process, in your planning. Similarly, if there is a global recession or a global boom, no firm can claim that we will not be affected by it. we will remain aloof and we don't bother about it. And this mentality, this psychology has hurt a large number of industries in the last big global recession, which was there from 2007, 8, 9, 10. And some effects, some ripples are still continuing. So, the macro issues which define the environment under which an industry is working. And as you, when you join an organization and as you grow higher in the hierarchy of that organization, from being an engineer to a manager and to a chief and to a general manager, you will find that the issues that come to you are less and less technical and more economic. Nobody will be coming that this machine is not working, so what do you do? Those issues will be taken care of at the lower level, but at a higher level, a manager or a general manager is required to think of whether the demand for my product, whether the market for my product exists, whether it is growing, whether it is shrinking. How Reserve Bank is changing their interest rates and how is it going to affect us? What is the liquidity condition in the economy? What is the scenario on foreign exchange? Whether the exchange rates are rising or falling, or likely to rise or fall. Now those companies which are globalized, for them any minor change in exchange rate has a big impact on their profitability. So my point only is that as one grows higher in the organization, the issues become more and more economic in nature rather than technical. And at that point of time, if you are equipped to deal with these things, to understand these things, your success as a manager is granted. If one shows ignorance at that point of time, it does not show a good light on your performance as such manager. No doubt, we keep on learning, and you will, and everybody will keep on learning as one grows. But the fundamentals are learned at this stage. This is very essential to understand. At a higher level, we deal with general issues, current issues. But what is the inherent logic behind it? That is learned at this stage. Nobody learns, even no engineer learns physics at that stage. But it is at this stage, if your knowledge of physics is sound, you tend to become a good engineer. If somebody's physics is weak, I think in future that person will face problems. So, although this is an elementary stage, a beginning, but to better prepare, these issues have to be understood. And therefore, I will be dealing with, rather than dealing with any current issue, we will be dealing with some fundamentals. And that is why, as I saw the course, the syllabus, it is designed in this way. So I will be today talking about the macro issue, and especially what we call the national income determination. Just as in micro issue you saw, the essential thing was, the primary focus was on seeing how prices are found in a market. Why the price is say 10 rupees, why it is not 8 or why it is not 12, why it is not 15. And you essentially understood that it is a game of demand and supply. But in macroeconomics, it is not so simple as we do in micro, that we look at the demand side and the supply side and find our equilibrium, where the, as you know, the quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied, and we say, okay, this is the price. And if the demand changes, price will change, and vice versa. In macroeconomic situation, when we are dealing with the macro issue, that is the national income determination, rather than determination of any firm's profits, the situation is little bit complex. Because there are n number of variables that affect the working of an economy, quite substantial. For example, a small change in the interest rate, if you go through the economic literature, current economic discussion, often there is said that why interest rates are not being brought down. In India, the interest rates are one of the highest. In US and UK or European countries, it is around 1% or 2%. In India, the normal interest rates are 8 to 10%, sometimes even in double digits. So often a talk is there, why interest rates are not being brought down in the country by 1%. Bankers and industries often say that, okay, let Reserve Bank bring it down by 0.5%. So you can see that even a 0.5% change can have a substantial impact. Even it seems to be very nominal, but still it is very substantial. Because it has a great role to play in determining the national income or national product, which often is called the GDP of an economy. Now this is the issue I am going to deal, starting with simple things and then coming to one issue which Dr. Gureth has specially requested me to take up, that is all in your syllabus it is given as ISLM curve approach to national income determination. Now, simply speaking, I hope you know that national income is a combination or is an aggregate of national expenditure. This often we see the income is equal to expenditure. It has to be. Otherwise, the economy will not be in equilibrium. It will keep changing. Now, expenditure is of three types, broadly speaking. That is consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, and the third is known as the government expenditure. So aggregate income has to be equal to aggregate expenditure. That means which we often call as Y is equal to C plus I plus G. Right? Consumption expenditure plus investment expenditure plus government expenditure should be equal to the income of the people, aggregate income in the economy. Now this C plus I plus G, this determines the national income. And let me very briefly say, it comes like this. Is it visible? Yes, sir. And here it is expenditure. Now when does it become equal? This is what we do by drawing a 45-degree line. And this is what we say, equilibrium is attained. Because at this point, the horizontal gap, which is income, is equal to the vertical gap. And therefore the national income is equal to national expenditure, and that is where the equilibrium comes. If you think for a moment that the income should be fixed at this level, for example this, Y1, then what you find that expenditure is greater than income. And when people tend to spend more, the income level increases. Why? Because one person's expenditure is an income for another. Right? What you spend on railways is an income of the railways, and through that it pays its salary. When you spend on your clothing, It is an income in the hand of that person, and that person again spends on somebody else. So expenditure of one is an income for another. So at individual level, our income does not always match with our expenditure. Some people spend more than their income, some people spend less than their income. But at a macro level, it has to match. The aggregate income has to be equal to aggregate expenditure. And that is how this equilibrium is maintained, where this income is equal to this aggregate expenditure. Right? I am told that this part has been covered. I just only to remind you. Now, C is consumption, which is based on your autonomous or minimum consumption, plus it depends upon income, which we often call as marginal propensity to consume. And through that you derive that consumption function. So in the whole of this is the consumption part, this is the investment part. This is the investment part, and this is the government expenditure. Now the investment part is assumed to be constant. You can say it is a parallel line. The gap between the two is fixed. Now this constant investment is because we assume investment to be what we call autonomous. That means it is fixed. It is irrespective of the income of the people. It is irrespective of the income of the people. Although it is not always essential that your investment is constant. But the major part is constant, and therefore for the sake of simplicity, we assume that our investment is constant, and therefore we draw a parallel line. Similarly, the third component, that is the government expenditure. Although there may be some changes in government expenditure on account of changes in the income of the people, but as I said, the major part is constant, and therefore for the sake of simplicity, it is safer to assume it is constant, and therefore we draw like this. In actual life it may not be like this. The investment may be changing with response to change in income, government expenditure may be changing in response to change in income, but as I said, we start simple and then introduce more and more complexities into it. That is how economics is studied, and for that matter, that is how every branch of knowledge is studied. You start with simple and gradually make it more and more realistic by introducing different complexities. We don't start with complexities first. Anyway, so in this manner, as I said, you find that both are added into the consumption, and then we find aggregate expenditure is equal to aggregate income, and that gives the income of the economy. Right? Now, coming to one important part, which is the rate of interest. We find that there is no narration or there is no mention of rate of interest in this. And as I said just now, that rate of interest is a very critical variable. Rate of interest is a very critical variable that needs to be taken into account for this purpose. Now in the old economics, early Keynesian economics, this was there, that this is how the national income is determined. But this is not complete. Now as economics developed further, people started, or different economists started introducing the element of interest rate in the whole process. Here you don't have. So how that happens, this is what I am going to focus now, which is called the ISLF approach of determining the income and the rate of interest in the economy. Now, for this purpose, the whole economy is divided into two broad components. One is known as the product market and the other is known as the money market. Whole economy will be divided into two these big segments. The product market is that where we have demand and supply of goods and services. Product does not mean physical goods only, it includes goods and services. And the other is known as the money market, or these days it is more fashionable to call it financial markets. Both mean the same thing. Money market is a slightly old term. Presently the term financial markets is more in vogue. Now in the product market, there is a production and consumption of goods and services, and they have to be in equilibrium. In the money market, there is a demand and supply of funds. There is a demand and supply of money. Those who have a surplus money, they lend it to others, and those who are in need of money, they borrow from them. This continuously takes place because any person who has a surplus money, he often does not know how to utilize it. So what he does, he lends it to others. Okay, you take my money, utilize it, but in lieu of that, pay me rate of interest. On the other hand, there are investors, industrialists, entrepreneurs who have investment ideas, who have set up industries. They know how to utilize the money for further production, for investment purposes, but they often lack the required funds. So they go to those who have the savings and take money from them, utilize it for further production, utilize it for investment purposes, and there both become the winners. The savers get the return in the form of interest, because otherwise their funds would remain idle, which will not earn any interest. And investors or the entrepreneurs, they get the required funds for further production activity, or through that they can develop more and more capacities and get profit. So this is how the financial markets work. Both are benefited by this market. Now, as I said, so in this way we have demand and supply of goods and services, which is called the product market, and then we have the financial market, where there is a demand and supply of money. This is called financial market or money market. Now the question is, how the money market affects the product market, and the product market in turn affects the money market. This is a very typical aspect. Now if we look at this, that is the income determination in this model, we see it is a function of investment as well as consumption. But how does the rate of interest come into play? You can find that in the product market, if there is a change in the rate of interest in the economy, what is the first thing to be affected? It is the investment. If the rate of interest is high, the investment becomes low. And if the rate of interest is low, then there are greater opportunities of investment. I will explain it why. Every investor for that matter looks at two things. What is my cost and what is my price? If they look at the funds, they say at what cost I am getting the funds and what return I am generating out of it. If the return that an entrepreneur, an investor is getting is equal to 12% and the cost of funds, that is the rate of interest, is 10%, then he is inclined to make that investment because he will pay 10% to those from whom he has borrowed, earn a return of 12%. So this 2% is a straight profit margin. If the interest rate suppose goes up to 12%, then there is no point in making that investment. Because 12% you will earn and 12% you will pay to the bank from whom you have borrowed. So where is your margin? What is your return to an investor or to an entrepreneur? If the rate of interest goes down, suppose it goes down to 8%. So even those industries, those production activities which earn only 10%, which could not be taken up earlier, can now be undertaken. Right? If earlier some industries were earning only 10% and if the rate of interest is also 10%, that you cannot possibly undertake it. But when the rate of interest has come down, you can undertake even those which we often call less profitable activities. So, as the rate of interest becomes lower and lower, even the so-called less profitable activities can be undertaken. And so, more and more investment takes place. This is how the economy will be affected by the changes in the rate of interest. Now, if the rate of interest goes down, you will find more investment will take place. So, rate of then if the rate of interest is say, this is at suppose 10%, this investment is at 10%, and if the rate of interest goes down to say 8%, more investment will take place. That is how it will be something like this, C plus I dash. Investment has gone up. From this level, it has gone up to a higher level. And if investment becomes higher, assuming that G or the government expenditure is the same, then the new C plus I dash plus G, this is the new curve, and then your equilibrium comes to this level. So your equilibrium income immediately increases. Your equilibrium income immediately increases by a decline in the rate of interest through the mechanism of greater investment. Are you getting this point? So if the rate of interest is low, more investment takes place, and when more investment takes place, the national income increases, and not merely equally, it increases through what we often call a multiplier effect. A multiplier effect means 100 rupees worth of new investment will bring about an additional income of 500. This is what we call a multiplier. So, a multiplier effect will take place and national income will increase. But if on the other hand, the rate of interest goes up, then investment is down, and that will reduce national income again through a multiplier effect. So in this manner, you will find that national income changes according to the changes in the investment, and investment is affected by changes in the rate of interest. Now, where is the rate of interest found, or where the rate of interest is determined? It is in the financial markets, or it is in the money market. So, this model is incomplete unless we also take into account the financial markets. Because rate of interest will be found in the financial markets, and this equilibrium, which we call equilibrium, will always remain fragile and unstable unless we also know whether our rate of interest is fixed or not, or if the rate of interest is continuously volatile, increasing or decreasing in an uncertain manner, then your national income will always keep on changing and we will not reach any equilibrium level. So that sort of an instability will remain. So the point I am making is that the money market or the financial market, they have a great role in determining this product market equilibrium. This equilibrium in the real sector, this is often called a real sector of the economy. Now this is one aspect. Another aspect is that how the product market equilibrium affects the money market. How the product market equilibrium affects the money market. That's also equally important. In the product market, as you see, the rate of income or the income level is found. But the income level is not, the story is not complete here, because the income level affects the financial market. Income level affects the financial market. Because the rate of interest is a function of demand for money. And demand for money is dependent on income also. Those who have lower demand, those who have lower income, their demand for money is less. Those who have higher income, their demand for money is more. They want to keep more money with them. Right? Rich persons keep tens of thousands with them, while a poor person may keep only a few hundred. So as the income level will increase, the demand for money will increase, and that affects the rate of interest in the money market or in the financial market. Now you see, for an equilibrium of the whole economy, we need equilibrium in the product market like this. We need an equilibrium in the money market where the rate of interest is found. But the two cannot be seen in isolation. For example, the product market or the real market people cannot say that, okay, we are not bothered about whatever happens in the money market because we are producing goods. Similarly, the money market people, that is the bankers and investors and savers, they cannot say at the same time that, okay, we are bothered only about the money. How much money is coming, how much money is being taken. In isolation, none of the market can work. Or if it tries to work, it will always be volatile, not able to find any equilibrium. So when we look at the economy as a whole, that is what macroeconomics talks. It doesn't talk of only one thing. It talks of the system as a whole. So when we are working or we are trying to find how the system as a whole is working, how the system as a whole is finding its equilibrium, then we have to talk of equilibrium not only in the product market, not only in this the money market, but an equilibrium which brings about an equilibrium in both the markets simultaneously. To try to understand this very essential thing. If we are looking at the equilibrium of the whole economy, we should have an equilibrium in market A and market B, but at the same time, the two equilibria should also be in equilibrium. This is often we call a super equilibrium. Equilibrium in product market should be in synchronization with the equilibrium in the money market, and only then the two equilibria will become stable. So these two things have to be taken into account simultaneously, and this is new macroeconomics. The earlier macroeconomists in earlier stages of the development of the national income analysis, they often ignored this aspect. They were often bothered about how the rate of interest will affect their equilibrium, but they were not sure how to incorporate that in this model. In the aggregate income is equal to aggregate expenditure, that's true. But how the two should be integrated, they were often not very sure of this thing. So this is what is called an ISLM approach, and now we go to see how to ensure that simultaneous equilibrium also takes place. That is, equilibrium in product market should be in sync with the equilibrium in the money market, and that equilibrium which we find, that will be the real equilibrium in the economy as a whole. Now, first we find out, to look at that we will now see both the product and the money market. As I said, the product market is an aggregate expenditure where a very important component is the investment, which changes in response to the rate of interest. And just as we say, please remember also, just as we say that aggregate expenditure should be equal to aggregate income, at the same time, we also should know that in every economy, saving should be equal to investment. As I said in the beginning, that individually, there may be some people who are having positive savings, that means their income is more than their consumption expenditure. At the same time, there may be some people who are spending more, who are investing more, and their savings are little. So at micro level, at individual level, it is okay. But when we look at aggregate, the national saving should be equal to national investment. So through that mechanism, we will find how it changes. Now you see, this is a saving curve and there is an investment curve. First we will do graphically and then we will take a mathematical solution to explain. Now this saving and investment are there. Saving is positively related to income, x-axis is the income. And investment is constant, as I said, we take investment is constant. Now, where is the equilibrium found? When the two are equal, that is at this point. So under the given scenario, equilibrium in the economy will be found at this point, where saving and investment are equal. Right? Now, if the rate of interest changes, Suppose the rate of interest goes down, interest rates fall. Then, as you have seen, investment will rise. Investment will rise, and this investment curve will shift upward, like this. Interest rate falls, investment goes up. So it is something like that, saying that this is investment at 10% rate of interest, and this one is an investment at 9% rate of interest. The new curve shows an investment level at a lower rate of interest. Now when the interest rate falls, this is the new, we'll say E1, and income level rises. Income level rises. Right? Suppose the rate of interest falls further, say 8%. It becomes 8%. Investment goes up further, and the equilibrium is at Y2. Right? So Y is at equilibrium income at 10%. Y1 is an equilibrium income at 9%. And Y2 is an equilibrium at 8%. And so on we can see. So what do we find? We find an inverse relationship. Please, attention here. We find an, please here, please note down. We find an inverse relationship between rate of interest and national income. That is what I was mentioning. So this is how it is proved. That there is an inverse relationship between rate of interest and national income. Right? It must be visible. If the rate of interest goes up, investment will fall, and as a result, income will also fall. So this inverse relation between the two, that is rate of interest and income, will help us derive another curve which we call on y-axis we take rate of interest and on x-axis we take income. Now if there is an inverse relationship between the two, the relationship can be shown something like this. May not be a straight line always, that's very true. May not be a straight line always, but the relationship between will be something like this. At a high rate of interest, income levels are low, and at a low rate of interest, the income level is high. This curve shows that at each point of this, suppose we take this point, or this point, or this point, any point we take, at every point of this curve, there is an equilibrium in the product mark, which we have just shown. At every point of this curve, there is an equilibrium in the product market. Only difference is that the equilibrium level of income is different. At the highest point, there is an equilibrium, but that equilibrium is at a lower income level. At a lower point, we find there is an equilibrium, but that equilibrium is at a higher level of income. But both are. So all points of this curve show an equilibrium in the product market. Hence we find this curve shows various points on which product market is at equilibrium at different rates of interest and different levels of income. And the relationship is inverse, meaning thereby at higher rate of interest, incomes are low, at lower rates, incomes are high. This is called what we call IS curve. This is what is called the IS curve, as I was saying, ISL. This is the IS curve. So what is an IS curve? It is a curve which shows equilibrium, various points of equilibrium in the product market, where the two are equal, the savings and investment are equal to each other. This is the IS curve. So it is derived from what we call the product market. We have derived it from the product market. Right? So this is one part of the story. That we have found a range of points where the product market is at equilibrium at different rates of interest and at different levels of interest. But now let us go to the other part. That is the financial markets. That is the financial markets. In the financial markets, the story is a little bit different. Now we come to that. The INS stands for investment and saving. So it is equality between saving and investment. That is indicated by IS curve. Equality between saving and investment at different points. Now, coming to the money market or the financial market, where what is done, where rates of interest are. The rates of interest sometimes go up, sometimes go down, and there are reasons for it. Now we have in the financial market two variables. One is called the demand for money, and the other is called the supply for money. Now the demand for money, as if you have learned it earlier, I don't know, has three components. Why we keep money with us, why we keep liquidity with us. Now famous Keynes said there are three motives for holding cash. Transaction motive, precautionary motive and speculative motive. So money is demanded in liquid form. In liquid form, money is demanded for three purposes. One is known as the transaction demand for money. Transaction demand for money means we keep cash or we keep cash in our bank to meet our day-to-day expenses. We go to the market, we have to pay fee, we go to a restaurant or to shopping mall. So we need money for our transactions continuously. And the need for transaction is on a continuous basis. Everybody is transacting at every point of time. So you need cash for this purpose. This is called the transaction motive or the transaction demand for money. Now this demand for money is related to your income level. Those whose income level is high, as I said, keep thousands in their pockets or in their bank account in liquid form. And those whose income is less, they may keep few hundred. So it is what we call is income elastic. The transaction demand for money is income elastic. it is positively related to the income level. If income level becomes high, there will be greater demand for transaction. Income levels are low, people will demand little money for transaction. Then the second purpose of keeping cash is what is called the precautionary mode. Apart from transaction, which can be foreseen, which can be projected, which can be estimated, people always keep some extra cash. Now, when you come from your home, you may need 1,000 rupees, but your mother will say, okay, keep 1,000 extra. Patani kab zarurat padega. Isn't it? So, apart from your estimated expenditure, people tend to keep more cash with them. Why? As a precaution to meet certain contingent expenses. Contingent expenses means which cannot be estimated in advance, but which may come at any point of time. You don't know. And since you don't know how much money will be needed, you cannot estimate it, but just as a precaution, just as a hedge, you keep some surplus. Surplus means over and above your estimated expenses. This is a precautionary mode. Right? Now, transaction demand and precautionary demand, both are income elastic. Income elastic. Note out there, I am continuously watching you people in this room. What are continuously discussing? You may discuss later. I am continuously marking. So, the demand for money for precautionary and transaction is income elastic. If income levels are high, people will tend to demand more of money for these two purposes. The third objective of keeping cash is called the speculative demand. Transaction motive, now this speculative motive is a bit typical. It changes in response to changes in the rates of interest. This is affected by rates of interest. If the rates of interest is high, if the rates of interest are high, people demand less cash with them. They want to keep less cash. And what do? With the rest, they lend it to others. If the rate of interest is say 10%, I would like to keep as much cash in bank as possible and keep as little as cash with me as possible. If the interest rate is say suppose falls to 2%, then I will say, let me keep more of cash with me, because whenever good investment opportunity will come, I will grab it. So, if the rate of interest is low, at a very low rate, then people have a high demand for money. They want to keep more and more in cash. Why should I lend? I will get only 2%. Better to keep it cash. Cash or in liquid form. This is called the speculative demand, and it changes with the rate of interest. And this demand for money, that is the speculative demand for money, The speculative demand for money is interest elastic and inversely related with the rate of interest. Inversely related with the rate of interest. You get this point? If the interest rate is high, speculative demand is less. If interest rates are low, speculative demand is more. And that is why, looking at this, then we have a demand curve for money, which is interest elastic. And it is something like this. This is how I am going to draw it. It is like this. The demand for money, or it is called liquidity preference. Liquidity preference. This is my preference for liquidity in response to rates of interest, different rates of interest. And inversely related, as you can see, at a high rate, the demand for money is less, and at low rate, the demand for money is less. So this is in the money market. This is in the money market. Now this liquidity preference, or also called the demand for money, is at a given income level. Obviously, when the income levels change, Now go to the money market. There also we have a relationship between the demand and supply, and it is in the money market the two should be in equilibrium. Demand for money should be equal to the supply of money. So it becomes something like this. Now, if I may write it like this. We have this. This is the demand for money. This is the supply of money. Now this relationship is before us. 50 plus 0.25y minus 1000 I equal to 275. Right? Now what happens here is 0.25y is equal to 275 minus 50 plus right? Isn't it? So we have this. Right? Now, we have this 0.25y is equal to 275 minus 50 plus 1000i. Now, this 0.25y is equal to this is 225 plus so it is because here it should be 375. Please make that correction to 375 now. Now you will get that answer, but whole number to join. Whether you take 250 or 375 or 275, answer will come. But we want a complete whole answer, not in fractions or in decimals. That is why 375, not 275. Right? So now you have 0.25y is equal to 325 plus 1000i. Now y here Now this is y is equal to 1300 plus 4000. 1300 plus 4000. Right? Now this relationship between income and rate of interest has been derived from the money market. Money market equilibrium we find. Hence, this y is equal to 1300 plus 4000 I. This is the LM curve. This is the LM curve. Now this LM curve has a positive relationship. IS curve has a negative relationship. Now when we integrate the two, please do that. Take that equation, y is equal to that. Take that equation, equalize the two and find out the rate of interest. Please do that. That part you do. 0.05. No, 0.05. I is 0.05. That means the equilibrium level of interest in the economy comes to 0.05 or 5%. Or 5%. And the level of income that comes is how much? Put that value either in IS or in LM curve. Put that value in either the IS or the LM curve. Hmm? 1500. Right? Now you have this final value for an economy. Rate of interest comes to 5% and income level in the economy comes to 1500. Right? Now if you want to see the impact, that is how the mathematical part is very helpful. Graphically, this is okay, we can explain. Suppose the investment function initially, which we took as I is equal to 100 minus 1000 I, we make it 200 minus 1000 I. Suppose the autonomous investment goes up from 100, it becomes 200. So keep everything else okay, everything else is the same. Take that consumption function as it is 250 plus 0.8y. Take this investment to be 100 minus 1000 I, instead take it 200 minus 1000 I. Then you will derive a new IS curve, assuming the LM curve to be the same. What rate of interest and what income level you find. Or if you want to do a simpler exercise, suppose we say that the supply of money is increased by Reserve Bank. So we have taken supply of money to be 275. Suppose the supply of money becomes 375. That will be an easier one to do. Please do either of them. To be simpler, you let the product market remain the same, but the money market, instead of money supply being taken 275, take it 375. Please do that and then find out the result. Please take money supply to be 375 instead of 275 and all other variables to remain the same. Then you will have IS curve to be the same, but LM curve would change. Then what do you get? If the money supply becomes 375, instead of 375, you may take it higher, 475. We work on 375 here, so take it higher value, 475. Money supply to be 475 instead of 375 only. If money supply is taken as 475, what happens, please? You will see rate of interest falling drastically, isn't it? The rate of interest falls drastically, and the income level rises, and the income level rises, and the income level rises. So a change in the supply of money, will affect the rate of interest as well as the income level in the economy. This is how the central banks all over the world try to manage the whole system. And that is how the whole economy moves to small changes in the rate of interest. And often, as you probably must be aware, who fixes the money supply or the rate of interest determined by the Reserve Bank of India. And that is why every quarter, when the Reserve Bank presents the monetary policy, they say that why we are lowering the interest rate or why we are not lowering the interest rate. By changing in the CRR or other aspects, they change the money supply available in the economy. So this single variable, which is the rate of interest, the single variable rate of interest is so critical. It is so critical that by what does the Reserve Bank do? It changes nothing. It has no control over the economy other than this control over the economy through the mechanism of rate of interest. So when the rates of interest are changed, you can influence all sectors of the economy. The whole macroeconomic system is subject to small changes in the rate of interest. And this way it plays a very critical role. As I said earlier, when the macroeconomics developed at earlier stages, the true impact of changes in the money supply or the rate of interest was not realized. But when the ISLM analysis technique came, it has changed how the whole economy is to be looked into. How changes in the demand for money, how changes in the autonomous investment, or how changes in the consumption function. Another change that you can see is that we have taken MPC to be 0.8. Isn't it? We have added 250 plus 0.8 Y. There is the propensity to consume to be 0.8. If we make our propensity to consume to be 0.75 only, then we can see that how the propensity to consume of the people changes and how it will affect the whole economy. So in this manner, the ISLM approach has proved to be very revolutionary in the analysis of the whole system, and it is very helpful. And before taking any decision, the Reserve Bank of India in here, the US Fed, the European Central Bank, and all of them, they have all the analysis done beforehand. Although, let me tell you very clearly, the relationship at a macro level, when we find out, we draw an equation, but to find out different variables is very difficult. And therefore, an estimate of the FPC, an estimate of the income relationship is tried to be found by the econometrician with the Reserve Bank and different central banks. And they try to make a sort of an estimate, and on the basis of their estimate, they let the Reserve Bank of India governor take a decision, and their decisions have then affecting the whole economic system. So this particular part of the ISLM approach, or which is called an integration of the product and the money market, this I wanted to take up. If you have queries, we can take up, or otherwise some points on the monetary policy aspect or the inflation aspect we can discuss for 10-15 minutes. Yeah, any query or questions you have? Yeah, any query, question you have? I'm told that you have only 5 minutes to go before you go for another class of yours. Now, please take your pieces of paper and just explain how the LM curve is derived. Please write only that. How the LM curve is derived. You have only 5 minutes. In 5 minutes you can do that. How the LM curve is derived. That's the only thing I want. Please don't discuss among yourself. You have to write independently. Don't discuss among yourself. Write independently whatever you understand. What is an LM curve and how is it derived? For just 5 minutes you have.